almost a very good feeling.
Wow. Hey, I'm looking for like an Air Force guy. I did one haircut. I borrowed the Colonel Pat. There's an officer always there to take care of us. So I borrowed his clippers and let my son do it. So I have a 6-year-old that's about it. It looks all right. So good to be here. You guys ready to do this? Yes, sir. All right. Right here? Head over to the over here. Okay.
All right, good afternoon. Welcome to the Kennedy Space Center. You know, it's been almost 9 years since July 4th of 2011. That's the last time a crew flew into the shuttle landing facility on their way to space. And I can't tell you how great it is to welcome Bob and Doug here for this historic mission. You know, I look at what we've accomplished. You know, this is a whole new way of sending people to space. The Commercial Crew Program. This really is monumental. And I consider all the things that we're doing, you know, and it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. I couldn't be more proud of the role that KSC has had to play in enabling U.S. astronauts flying on U.S. rockets from here at the Cape once again. Absolutely outstanding. So great to have you guys here. And you're going to hear from Bob and Doug in just a minute. But before they get a chance to talk and get introduced, it's my privilege and honor to introduce our NASA administrator, Jim Bridenstine. Jim has been a huge advocate for the Commercial Crew Program, and his leadership, you know, he's been a strong supporter of the government-commercial partnerships, a new way of doing business at NASA, and especially here at the Kennedy Space Center. And, you know, like Doug and I, Jim is also a naval aviator, and I kind of wonder if maybe he wouldn't like to trade places with Doug. I know I sure would. So, Jim, over to you, sir.
All right, thank you, sir. Bob, yeah, thank you.
And reach people in different ways. Virtual reality allows people to be transported to another time or place.
Did somebody change the world for us?
For our students, they put on the headset each week for class, and they're transported into the VR classroom. This 3D space has digital whiteboards, it has a screen, it has all the things that our classroom is used to having, but it just has it in a virtual way. In our
astronauts on American rockets from American soil yet again. And as you said, Bob, this time we're doing it differently than we've ever done it before. NASA is not going to purchase, own, and operate the hardware the way we used to purchase, own, and operate the hardware. We are partnering with commercial industry with the intent that they would go get customers that are not NASA and drive down our costs and increase the access to space. And ultimately have multiple providers that are competing against each other on cost and innovation. And of course, that's what this Commercial Crew Program that NASA has been pushing forward on for so long, that's what this program is in fact all about. I'm gonna turn it over to the astronauts here in just 1 second, but just to put a historical significance on this moment in time. This will be the 5th time in American history when we have launched American astronauts on a brand new vehicle. We did it in Mercury, Gemini, Apollo. We did it with the space shuttles, and now we're going to do it on a SpaceX Falcon rocket with a Crew Dragon space capsule. And it's these gentlemen that are going to have the opportunity to pioneer once more for the United States of America in what is this new era in human spaceflight. So this is a very historically significant moment. And I also want to say that I know times are tough right now. You know, Bob Cabana and I have been walking around in our masks. Everybody wants to shake hands, and yet we have to resist. We just welcomed our astronauts, and we couldn't shake. We're waving from 6 feet away, and we're looking at all the media that are here, and everybody's wearing their masks. This is a tough time in American history. It's a tough time in world history. But it is not unique to the times that we saw in the 1960s. We had a war raging in Vietnam. We had protests. We had civil rights abuses and civil rights protests. We had division in this country, the likes of which were never seen before. And at the same time, NASA was able to unite not just the United States of America, but we were able to unite the world in this very unique moment when we saw Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin land on the moon. Now here we are in this point where NASA has not had access to the International Space Station with its own rockets now for 9 years. And this is a moment when we can all look and be inspired as to what the future holds. We have a moment in time when we don't just have to reflect on how difficult things are right now, but we can talk about how bright things are going to be in the future. And with that, I just want to say thank you to Bob and Doug for the great work you're about to do, the amazing work you've already done. Veterans of multiple space shuttles each, space shuttle flights each, and just you're the best that America has to offer. And we're thrilled that you're willing to take on this mission to once again return American astronauts on American rockets from American soil to the International Space Station. So with that, I'll turn it over. Bob Behnken, I'll turn it over to you first to say a few words, and then you can turn it over to Doug, and then it's over to you guys. You guys are going to be answering questions. So with that, Bob, I'll turn it over to you.
Well, thank you, sir. We really appreciate the introduction and would like to thank Colonel Cabana for his leadership both here at the Kennedy Space Center and back at the Johnson Space Center when we all entered our service as astronauts. He was the chief of the office and welcomed us aboard, and so we've been under his tutelage or leadership for quite some time, and we really appreciate that. Both Doug and I are really excited to be here. This is an awesome time to be an astronaut with a new spacecraft, to get a chance to go and fly. As graduates of military test pilot schools, if you gave us one thing that we could have put on our list of dream jobs that we would have gotten to have someday, it would have been to be aboard a new spacecraft, be conducting a test mission aboard that spacecraft, and Doug and I get that chance to do it. So we're thankful for that opportunity. And we view it as an opportunity, but also a responsibility for the American people, for the SpaceX team, for all of NASA that's put this opportunity together and entrusted us with it. And so just excited to be back in the great state of Florida at the Kennedy Space Center, headed toward 39 Alpha, and a chance to launch again from American soil on an American rocket. Thank you.
That's good.
Yeah, over to you, Doug.
It's just, it's an incredible honor to be back here at Kennedy Space Center. Bob and I started out, our first astronaut jobs were here at Kennedy. So we spent the first 3 or 4 years after we were ASCANs launching, or helping to launch, obviously, shuttles into space. And this is a very, very special place to us. It's almost like a home away from home. So it's great to be back. It's an incredible time for NASA, the space program. Once again, launching U.S. crews from Florida, and hopefully just a week from about right now, which is incredible. I happen to have been one of the 4 astronauts that landed here almost 9 years ago in T-38s on the 4th of July of 2011 to close out the space shuttle program. So it's incredibly humbling to be here to start out the next launch from the United States. Also want to thank the incredible men and women of SpaceX, from Hawthorne to McGregor, and here at Kennedy, that have put so many thousands of hours of work into this rocket and to this spacecraft. And we're looking forward to getting up close and personal with Falcon 9 and Crew Dragon here in just a few days. Thanks again for everybody at home supporting us and supporting NASA. This is a great time in America to be able to do this again, and Bob and I are honored to be the lucky ones to fly this vehicle. Thank you.
Hello, this is Marcia Dunn of the Associated Press. It's been a long road, an emotional roller coaster. Do you have a sense of triumph, at least a little bit? And tell me what's going through your minds and hearts as you're finally here to really launch.
I don't, triumph is probably not the word I would use. I mean, we've been working, Bob and I have been working on this program for 5 years, day in and day out, and there are folks here at NASA and at SpaceX, it's longer than that. It's been a marathon in many ways, and that's what you'd expect to develop a human-rated space vehicle that can go to and from the International Space Station. So I think it's a long time coming in some ways, and I think if you asked us, how quickly getting to this point, it's gone pretty fast. Other times it's been very slow, and just a lot of work, a lot of travel for a lot of people to get us to this point. So I think it's kind of a culmination, and it's that next stage of human spaceflight.
Hey, Bob, Doug, good to see you guys.
Hey, good to see you.
Thanks. Doug, I'll give this one to you. When you landed on STS-135 9 years ago, right over there, you had no way of knowing how or when Americans would launch again from American soil. There was no NASA SpaceX partnership. There was nothing called CCP. Does it seem improbable now that you're back how this whole thing has come full circle, both for you in particular?
Yeah, I mean, when you fly a shuttle flight, by the time you land, you're just exhausted. You're glad that you had a successful mission, and you just want to see your family. And I think, after that, you think about, okay, what's next? Because we obviously knew that was the last shuttle flight, but we also knew we were flying people on Soyuz. We were going to continue to fly on space station and those kinds of things. So, yeah, from that standpoint, absolutely no expectation that frankly, that I would have even flown again. But, it's an evolving thing. And, the folks at NASA had a great idea to form a public-private partnership with companies and compete for basically space travel. And it has ended up in this situation. And, we're lucky enough to be on the vehicle, obviously, but it has been a long road in a lot of ways. But I certainly consider myself very lucky to be part of it.
Feels good to be in the launching business again.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Hey guys, good to see you. Greg Palone, Spectrum News 13. Enjoyed flying with you in the STA, Doug, back in 2011. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that was a while ago.
That was a while back, I know, almost a decade. Just wanted to know, back in 1981, these two guys named Young and Crippen climbed on top of a shuttle, the Shuttle Columbia. It had never been flown. It was a test. Have you guys taken some inspiration from those two guys doing what they did? A pair of guys getting on this huge spacecraft, and now you're going to be going on a test flight as well on a brand new spacecraft. Any inspiration from those?
We certainly take inspiration from all those who've come before us, particularly the folks that have done a first first flight of a new vehicle. I think whenever we've had a chance to speak with some of those folks, and I know the STS-135 crew kind of had a special relationship with that crew being the first and the last in the shuttle business. Whenever we've had a chance to speak with the astronauts who had those opportunities before us or those responsibilities before us, the thing they've emphasized is in the moment being as prepared and ready for whatever may come your way as possible. And I think the inspiration to do that has come from their successes, and both Doug and I take that very seriously. Whenever we've executed a training simulation or a verification event of the spacecraft hardware, we've really tried to focus on and think about, hey, what would Bob, not this Bob or that Bob, but Bob Crippen have done in this situation, or what would Captain Young have said at our Monday morning meeting? He was there when we entered our service in the astronaut corps. Always had good ideas and just willing to share them with everybody, anyone who would listen. And we took that to heart and, made sure that whenever we were presented those opportunities, we asked those questions. We tried to be as prepared as possible. Nobody wants to see this mission to be a success more than us, as you might imagine. And we don't want to be the folks that don't make it successful. So we definitely take inspiration from those that have come before us.
Good afternoon, Melanie Holt, WFTV. Chris Cassidy is up at the station right now and a little short-handed. Has any determination been made on how long you all will stay at the station?
For a while, I think is the right answer. 1 to 4 months is what I think they're looking at. And of course, there's a lot of things that go into that decision. And part of it is the flight test of this particular vehicle. Part of it is whoever's coming next, Crew 1, those folks, and when that vehicle will be prepared and ready to go. And then the things that need to be done on board space station. So it's just a lot of juggling going on right now, and trades being made, and and we're prepared for any and all of those eventualities. And honestly, in fact, we just got an email from Chris last night, and I think I can quote him. He said something about he's looking forward to seeing our ugly mugs on board Space Station, and I don't particularly agree with him on that part, but he is working very hard up there, as you might imagine, as the single USOS crew member, and we're hoping to just go up there and lend a couple extra sets of hands and hopefully not make more work for him in the meantime. But it's exciting because we know Chris very well. I flew with Chris. My wife flew with Chris. So it's a special time for all of us to just get to be up there on Space Station together and maybe take in a little bit of everything ISS has to offer, rather than the 2-week shuttle mission, which is just, you never stop and you don't get a chance to really take it all in quite as much.
Thank you.
Hi, Dan Billow from WESH. I'll address this to you, Doug, just randomly, I guess, but I'd like to know what you think of the Crew Dragon as a flying machine.
I think it's an outstanding flying machine. The folks at SpaceX, as well as Kathy Leaders and her team with Commercial Crew, have just spent a ton of time working on this vehicle and honing it to the vehicle it is right now. It's been through all kinds of different testing, culminated a few months ago with the in-flight abort, which is probably one of the most incredible things I've ever seen in person. Just an amazing vehicle. It is definitely not the space shuttle in many ways. It's much smaller, but it's a capsule. It's state-of-the-art from a technology standpoint, and we are so excited to be in a real spaceship and not the simulator here in just a week.
Hi, Stephen Clark from Spaceflight Now over here. Good to see y'all. What do you guys have planned over the next week between now and the launch? I think you're going to be able to actually strap into the spacecraft this weekend, get a look around and get a feel for it. But also, how excited are you for that? And are you going to have any time to spend time with your families, maybe at the beach house? Any other things that you're excited about over the next week, getting ready to launch on May 27th?
We do have a lot of exciting activities over the next 7 days. We'll get a chance to put our spacesuits on again to make sure that they're finally completely up and ready for the actual event. As you mentioned, we'll get a chance to climb into the Dragon capsule, strap in, and walk through the pre-launch timeline inside the vehicle. That'll involve riding in the Teslas out to the launch pad, going through that whole exercise just to polish the team one more time prior to the launch. And then, of course, the big show on the 27th you're familiar with. We will have our families in town here in a few days and get a chance to spend time with them. They've been observing a pretty tight quarantine to make that a possibility, and so I think both Doug and I are really excited to spend some time out at the conference center, right, Colonel Cabana, the conference center, formerly known as the Beach House. Get a chance to go and visit that facility and maybe start a tradition or two out there with our families as a part of the new era that we're embarking on. Thank you.
Thank you.
And this will be our last question.
Hi, gentlemen. Mike from Fox 35 in Orlando.
Hi, Mike.
So you guys have been training for this for such a long time, and then you get this wrinkle called the coronavirus. So I wonder how that changed preparation for this mission. You planned, you got all ready, and then this was like the monkey wrench. So what will you tell us about how that made things different?
Well, I think just as every person standing here and every person in the United States and around the world, this has been, I think, it's been a huge wrinkle, to say the least, to adjust everyone's lives and how we do business and how we train and how we operate. It's been a huge, obviously, shift for everybody. But I think for us in particular, it was challenging because we were at that phase probably the last year and a half, where we were traveling to SpaceX literally every week, and we had to come up with ways to make sure that not only did we keep the teams that we were working with safe, but obviously ourselves safe and our families. So I can't emphasize enough of how quickly the folks out in Hawthorne, because that's where we did a majority of the Dragon training, responded and did everything that they could to keep us safe, and obviously they did great work, as well as the folks at Johnson and NASA. And we had to come up with a lot of unique ways to continue the training without too big of a speed bump. And I you know, that is, there have been so many things over the course of the last several years that have amazed me, but that certainly is high on the list, because just for the absolute complete shift that people had to do in the way they just did anything in their normal lives completely changed. And to continue training not only on Dragon, but getting our training on Space Station before we left was also important, and the teams just really came together and pulled it off. So I you know, it'll be something that we'll have to talk about in a lot more detail after the flight, just how people just really stepped up. It was really a neat thing to see.
Okay, so I know that was the last question. I'm going to take liberty and ask one final question, if that's okay. You guys have been communicating with me, and I've seen that as you are blazing this trail, and you really are blazing a trail, each of you has shown me from time to time new traditions that you are establishing. And it's hopeful that those traditions will carry on and maybe even be added to in the future. Would each of you share some of your thoughts on what are the new traditions that you have already established? I know there's going to be more. We've got another week before launch. But as far as where we are right now, what are some of those new traditions that you have established?
Let's see, I think back at my home in Houston, we took the opportunity to do something that's pretty common from an astronaut perspective around the world, which is to plant a tree someplace. And so I've done it in Baikonur. Crews do that in Kazakhstan on their way to launch on the Soyuz. And I took the opportunity with my family to do a tree planting, so not necessarily a public sort of event, but a personal sort of an event. And so my son will always have that lemon tree that he was a part of planting, that hopefully it makes it through Houston's hot summer this year and becomes a tradition for some other folks as well.
Yeah, I would say the one thing I'll talk about, we yesterday had our final proficiency sim with SpaceX. They have a facility in Houston.
And so we used to do a little bit of what we call tagging in the service. What it is essentially is putting a sticker on the simulator for your mission when you're complete with the training. And so yesterday, Bob and I put the DM2 sticker on the SpaceX simulator in Houston as kind of a continuing tradition. And I think the administrator brings up a great point there. You know, we feel somewhat responsible to continue some of these really neat traditions that both the Soyuz crews have had for many years and the shuttle crews have had, and then maybe come up with a few of our own. And as we go through this journey, we'll certainly share some more of those.
Well, I want to thank you, Bob and Doug, for taking the time. I know there's a lot of work to do between now and launch, taking the time to spend with us and share some of your stories with the media. You really are a bright light for all of America right now. And this mission is a bright light for all of America. We're so grateful for your sacrifice. And I can tell you, when I grow up one day, I want to be like Bob and Doug. So thank you so much for all you've done and all you're about to do. And thank you to the media for coming to cover this great event. Appreciate you guys.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you all.
Ini orang dia